In a quiet village surrounded by towering mountains, there lived a boy named Ayaan. He was a dreamer with eyes always looking up at the peaks that loomed over his home. The villagers spoke of the mountain in hushed tones, telling stories of those who had tried and failed to reach its summit. It was a challenge no one had conquered in generations. Ayaan, however, wasn't afraid. He would sit by the fire, staring at the mountain, and whisper to himself, "One day I will climb to the top." He didn't know how, and he didn't know when, but the dream was real, burning inside him like a fire that could never be put out. One bright morning, with nothing but a simple backpack and a heart full of hope, Ayaan began his journey. The village looked at him with a mix of pity and disbelief. "He'll never make it," some said. "It's impossible," others whispered. But Ayaan smiled, knowing that his dream was bigger than their doubts. At first the path was gentle, the wind was warm, and the sun shone down on him like a blessing. He was filled with excitement, thinking that maybe this would be easier than he thought. But as the hours passed, the terrain grew harsher. The climb became steeper, the air thinner, and the weight of his backpack felt heavier with each step. Soon Ayaan found himself slipping on loose stones. His hands were raw and his legs trembled from the exhaustion. At one point he thought about turning back. The doubt crept in, and the thought of failure loomed large. "Maybe they were right," he thought. "Maybe I'm not strong enough." But just as he was about to give up, he remembered something his father once told him. "Strength isn't just in your muscles, son. It's in your heart, in the will to keep going when everything tells you to stop." With renewed strength, Ayaan pressed on. Days turned into weeks, and the climb became a battle, not just with the mountain, but with himself. The cold nights were the hardest. His body would ache, and the loneliness would seep in, leaving him wondering if he was losing his mind. One evening, as the wind howled and the cold bit into his skin, Ayaan sat down to rest, overwhelmed by the weight of his journey. It was then that he met an old shepherd, wrapped in a tattered cloak. The shepherd had seen many winters, his face weathered with time. He looked at Ayaan and asked, "Why do you climb this mountain, my boy?" Ayaan, tired and worn, replied with tears in his eyes, "I climb because I want to prove to everyone, and to myself, that I'm not afraid, that I am strong enough to chase my dreams." The shepherd smiled kindly and placed a weathered hand on Ayaan's shoulder. "The mountain doesn't care about proving anything to anyone, but it will teach you something far more valuable. It will teach you who you are. Every step, every fall, every time you want to give up, it will show you the strength you never knew you had." Ayaan, inspired by the shepherd's words, found a new sense of peace. The journey wasn't just about reaching the peak. It was about discovering himself, overcoming the obstacles that had once seemed impossible. The mountain became less of a challenge and more of a teacher. Finally, after weeks of struggle, Ayaan reached the summit. The view was more beautiful than he had ever imagined, but it was the peace in his heart that overwhelmed him. He had not only conquered the mountain, but had also conquered his doubts, his fears, and the voice inside that said he wasn't enough. When Ayaan returned to the village, the people who had once doubted him looked at him with new eyes. He had changed, not just in how he looked, but in the way he carried himself. He didn't need to boast or show off. His journey had already spoken louder than words ever could. The villagers, inspired by his perseverance, began to see their own mountains not as obstacles, but as opportunities. They realized that every challenge, no matter how great, could be overcome with the right mindset and heart. Conclusion: Ayaan's journey shows us that true strength isn't in avoiding the challenges we face, but in embracing them. It's about believing in ourselves when no one else does, pushing forward even when we want to quit, and understanding that the journey, with all its struggles, is what truly shapes us. It's not the destination that defines us. It's the courage to take the first step and to keep going, no matter what.